Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today's subject is apex or not to apex. Is that the question? Well, let's find out about how to apex a bend in a road and how different riders view this task. We will of course take a look at a typical rider's eye view, a professional expert trainer and also an experienced rider. And first and foremost, just what is an apex of a bend? Well, the apex of any bend is termed as the spot at where the bend is at its sharpest point to you, and that's likely where you'll be travelling at the slowest speed. But just before we get into the apex, let's take a look at the types of bend, and just remember these roads are based in the UK. And here we have a 2D diagram representing a UK road with a centrally broken white line dividing the single lanes in either direction, and as indicated between the two pointed green arrows is a constant radius bend. And a constant radius bend is a bend in which is quite common, and when you negotiate arriving in position 1 for say a right hand bend or position 3 for a left hand bend, it gives you a clear view into and around the bend for you to identify the apex of that bend, and if safe to do so, you can then alter your position and speed to negotiate safely through that particular apex. More about that later. This next slide shows a open radius bend where once you begin to negotiate towards the center of the bend, you find that the bend opens out for you and allows you a greater degree of acceleration before you finally exit the turn. And then we have every rider's nightmare bend, especially when it's blind, is the reduced radius on exit bend, where you've arrived as instructed by the advanced riding schools with your constant maintenance position throttle, and then the bend tightens up before you. This is not the way to safely negotiate a bend, and additional skills are needed, and more of those skills in subsequent videos. So here we have what appears to be a group of 5 riders, 2 at the back, 3 at the front, and we just freeze frame on the approach to this left hand bend. And if we look at the lead motorcyclist, they're sitting quite centrally within their lane. The second rider slightly right of centre, and the third rider is slightly right of centre again. So they've got a clear view up to into the bend. They've identified the limit point, they've got their positions and speed adjusted to suit, and on this occasion they can look clearly across to the left of the bend and predominantly most of the way down the hill before they begin to decide on what their apex turn-in point may be. So they continue to identify the apex and turn in. We'll freeze frame it at this point. We can see once more that the lead motorcyclist maintains a central position within their lane. The second rider has a different approach point and sits in position 3, looking down through and across the bend, as does motorcycle number 3. So these 3 typical riders do indeed have different viewpoints on what the turn-in point is, and you could say that this radius of bend is reasonably constant. There's a kink, and equally if you look at the camber or elevation, it's more of a super elevation example, which would give you a positive camber experience whilst turning into this left-hand bend. So we freeze frame once more, and doing the head count, the lead motorcyclist maintained a central line throughout the whole of the bend. So at what point was the apex achieved? Only by the physical shape of the curvature of the bend would identify an apex for rider number 1. Rider number 2 did start in position 3 but turned in centrally, probably more so to avoid the oncoming car. And if you look at the white lines centrally within the road, they're quite erased, so that would indicate that vehicles coming up the hill tend to cut that bend, so it was a good plan for rider number 2. And rider number 3 has taken even a little bit more caution and come further in, and it'd be fair to say that rider 3's apex would be around about the point where he meets in alignment the large rock in the curbside coming up to his left knee. So 3 different riders, 3 different approach positions, 3 different turn-in points, and 3 different apexes as they exit. So now we move on to the IAM Road Smart for a change from ROSPA, another advanced rider group. This one I had the displeasure to ride with and support and volunteer for, and this is one of the publications that the associates would use under your guide as a supposed expert with passion. And under the cornering section on page 27, there's 5 photographs to illustrate to a reader of the information to think of whilst you're negotiating a right hand bend. And the first thing that I did logically was draw a vertical line through the centre of the frame of the pictures to identify that the photographer was actually standing on the wrong side of the road rather than on the left side of the road, or perhaps in position 1 where a motorcyclist might position themselves to negotiate a right hand bend, making the pictures more sensible, common sense and valuable to any prospective learning associate reading this publication. This is many examples that I didn't agree with IM Road Smart's publications, which led to them asking me to quietly leave. So I did. But as we turn to page 28, there is a section in regards to your position, where it says position correctly throughout the bend, but remember, nobody told Bob how to position in position 2 instead of position 1 for his right hand bend. And it mentions there briefly about straight line the bend and if safe to do so, but quite often it's just unconfirmed that you can, so I don't see the point of including that. And all too quickly it brings you to the end of the section in the publication that is involved for cornering without any actual mention of the word apex. So it appears to me that the advanced rider training bodies of IM Road Smart and ROSPA within the UK simply don't acknowledge that an apex of any bend actually exists. They do, however, suggest that you should maintain an appropriate throttle position, gently applying the throttle to maintain a maintenance position to carry you through the bend which has no apex. And it says it may need to be varied depending upon the severity of the corner and in light of changing circumstances. Now, does this acknowledge that there could be a reduced radius bend which has a definition of an apex which your maintenance position throttle cannot accommodate your safe continuance for? More about that in the next video. And so finally we reach page 30 in the chapter of bends in the associate logbook produced by IM Road Smart, and we find that Bob has indeed got a friend who has also read the same publications, as they both enter and negotiate right hand bends in position 2 as opposed to position 1. At least there is a constance. So here we have a still photograph of a cold winter's day with a farm building to the left and a rider approaching, having conducted all of the rear visibility checks and adjusted the speed of the motorcycle accordingly, adopting position 1 to the left hand side of the road, keeping your head up and looking to the apex of the bend and beyond down to the right hand side. The rider then has to take on board all information, but remember to take control of your pinpoint vision and use your peripheral vision to identify such things as movement in the side roads and such like. The point of concern of this rider at the moment is to identify the point at which the closed view of the road ahead begins to open and you can actively see both sides of the curb line and there's no traffic in between. At that point, you also wish to understand what is your apex. Now, I did speak once to a known national observer of a Tayside advanced motorcyclist, a guy called Scott Galloway, and I asked him this question: what line do you take through a bend? And he looked very, very confused. He looked back at me and said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what's your apex? And he said, well, there's only, I've been told there's only one apex to every bend. Well, I agreed with that, because when a road laying manufacturer makes and constructs a road, they have to identify the apex point of laying the tarmac, and on a racetrack that could actually be seen in some cases as the apex of a racing line. But we are not on a racetrack, we're on a street, and the roads are divided in the centre by a white line, so that indeed identifies the apex to us. So you've got apex 1, the manufacturers, apex 2, the white line dividing. But if you abide by the rules and dictations of IM Road Smart, you are to maintain your position throughout the bend, which means position 1, and that's only going to identify the third location of an apex. So now we've got 3 apexes, but I'm not interested in those apexes. I'm interested in my apex, and my apex is dictated by the exit point I wish to achieve, and that indeed would be the far yellow arrow exiting in position 1, but I wish to turn in through the bend because it's clear to do so. So I then draw a line imaginary with the second yellow arrow, and that is my target point for my own apex. So now we've identified that there's potentially 4 apexes for me for every single bend. So with your head looking up in the direction of travel and a counter steer pressure applied to the right hand bar, you dip the bike in, using your peripheral vision to monitor your approach to, through and beyond that apex point that you imagined on the road surface. And as you meet that apex point, that's where you pick up the throttle and accelerate out to the exit point of position 1. It's smooth, it's simple, it's clean, and it's quick. So this was indeed a very simple example of a very simple constant radius right hand bend. I will produce further videos to accommodate all the other types of bends, but both to the right and to the left. But needless to say that advanced riding, there is no big secret. It's just common sense and application of a logical thought process from looking ahead proactively to sustain your safety bubble. If you've got a safety bubble, you'll always be safe. To apex a bend is an expression of freedom, of fun within the world of motorcycling, which I feel quite often is let down by the advanced rider training bodies who control every process to the nth degree, and riding becomes a chore and is no longer fun. If it's not fun, then what's the point? So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like and subscribe, and look forward to ring that bell and see the new videos coming out, of which there will be many, and I hope to see you soon. So think safe, ride safe, and I'll see you next time.